I watched both of those videos that Cyril sent. What I didn't get a chance to do a whole ton on is the census thing. So can someone give me a breakdown real quick?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll hang on. So, because I looked at this and everybody knee-jerk reacts, and I did too a little bit. I looked at this and I'm thinking of the administration that's in power, right?
Mm-hmm.
And thinking of their stance towards immigrants. I immediately was just like, is this a way to find specifically where illegals are and just kick them out? And that was my first knee-jerk reaction.
Hold on.
But hang on, let me finish.
Hold on. No, go back further because I don't even know the question.
Oh, so the question is just, are you legal or not? That's the question.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Not legal. A citizen, right?
Are you a citizen? So, I mean,
that's a different question.
Thing. Is
No,
it though?
'cause
If
you
you're
can-
illegal, you
you
can't
can
be a
be-
citizen. No, you
can be a
can't.
permanent resident, and you're not.
Oh, okay.
A citizen.
Okay.
There's plenty of. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
That's a different question.
No, that's fair. Okay. So, yeah, it's basically, are you a citizen or not? And like I said, my first knee-jerk reaction was, oh, is this just this weird, hateful towards immigrants administration trying to find a way to like find these people and kick them out? And at first, that's what I thought 2 + 2 = 4 on, but it doesn't, because I read into it a little bit, and it also, I don't think, and I should say that, but from the things that I read, I don't think it's that. I think it's a lot of times before when this question isn't asked, even if you're not a citizen, right, you got added into the population numbers of that state. So now if a lot of these people who aren't citizens, whether they're illegal or not, get eliminated from the count from that state, that's where I think this administration is coming from. And why do I think they're doing that? Or why do I think that's where they're coming from? Because a lot of these people apparently are from blue states. So if blue states have less people being counted, then they have less representatives in the federal government. So I think that that is probably the driving force behind this. I can't really, and I'd like to hear what you guys think as far as like, why do you think they would do this? Like, Chad, why do you, because Caleb's probably reading up on it still, but like, why do you think they would do this? Like,
well, real quick, I threw it from pewresearch.org. Here's the actual question, it looks like, according to pewresearch.org. Or I guess what the question would look like, more so.
Right. Yeah, and Chad brought up a great point. It's right. It's citizen, not illegal or legal, because that is a difference. That's
well,
fair.
I guess the way that question, Caleb, is that what they're going to put on the 2020 census?
Well, again, this is from pewresearch.org. For the first time since 1950, U.S. Census Bureau is planning to ask everyone living in the United States whether they are citizens when it conducts its next decennial. I'm guessing that is
decennial.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Decennial census in 2020. Anticipating that some immigrants might avoid answering the question, the Trump administration wants to try to use other government records to fill in its missing response. The new question would be included at the Justice Department's request, according to a memo by Wilbur Ross, Secretary of the Commerce Department. It would supply block-level data on citizen and non-citizen voting age population. So it sounds like this is what they're
the way that
putting forth as
if that's the way it looks on the census, then checking that last box would basically declare yourself as illegal, wouldn't it? Because everything else is covered there.
Right.
No, because you can have a green card. You can still be like you can have a visa. You can have.
Do you take a census though if you're like here on a work visa?
I don't think. How would you answer that? Because I'm looking at the options and I'm not really sure how you answer that. So
I don't think people who are here on work visas, because you're not part of the population, you're here temporarily.
Say not. Yeah, I think Hill was about to say, and I agree. You would say you're not a citizen. That's what you would say. You're not a U.S. So, interesting.
I guess the argument for the positive position on this would be, if you are legal and living in the United States, then why should you be represented? Why should you have representation if you're not actually part?
And that makes sense
of our system.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I do. But we can also dig a little deeper into that. What if they pay taxes because they go to the store and they pay consumption tax and they
sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I mean, it's not black and white there. I don't think that they pay all the taxes we do. So don't get me wrong.
So this is probably not the greatest place to quote, but I just Googled real quick. Are non-U.S. citizens supposed to answer the census questionnaire? Again, not the greatest site, but it's what I got when I lightly Googled. According to Todd Gardner, 2-time U.S. Census enumerator, yes, everyone who is a resident in the country is expected to answer it. It is counting the people who live here, regardless of nationality or citizenship. The survey you got is probably one of the statistical surveys in the Census Bureau performs annually. I could tell you more.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, long story short, yes, it seems like even if you are not a citizen, you are expected to fill it out. So I would assume that would cover people on work visas, green cards, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So filling that out, no, wouldn't necessarily dictate that you are an illegal in our country.
Yeah, and that matters because then...
Well, unless that's another question on the census. If you really want to dig into it.
I don't think... as far as we know, it's not.
Sure. I mean...
And I mean, you can lightly Google it. But I don't know. I rack my brain. Where the discussion can be had is I rack my brain over, like, why would they do this? Like, what's the point? You know?
I mean, it's a pretty clear point, isn't it?
What do you think?
Just for data purposes?
No, or I think that data would be used in a political sense to say, look at,
right.
Look at what's happening. And to potentially reinforce this idea that, immigrants are flooding the country. Even though you could say, like, okay, let's just 1 million people that checked off, I'm not a citizen. How many of that million is green card or visa or here on a student, or I think there's student visa, work visa. There's a bunch of different visas, right?
Right. Yeah, there is.
I think, right? If you're just taking that number at face value and saying, look at how many people checked off that they're not a citizen in this country. That's a dangerous number to go floating around, unless you're using it for...
Yeah.
Aren't people just going to avoid that census like the plague then if they're undocumented? Especially considering it's an administration that has shown no favor towards illegal immigrants?
I mean, it depends. Right? Can they hold that over your head, though?
Yeah, it depends on if you're aware.
Right? Can they say, oh, you're coming here for food stamps? Well, you can't get it and fill out the census.
Mm-hmm.
Are there ways that the government has to kind of make you indirectly or by withholding certain things or something of that nature? I mean, that's how I would imagine that they would get you to fill out whatever it is that they wanted you to fill out.
Mm-hmm.
Which you kind of do that anyway. I think when you apply for food stamps and whatnot, I think you already do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think ultimately the purpose here is to get a number.
But don't we already have numbers? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I think the numbers that we have, because if you pull a number, and I can try and lightly Google, but I think if you pull a number up, it's going to say we have this many illegals, this many on work visa, this many on green card, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the potential there, and again, I feel like every time I talk to you guys, I feel like I have a tinfoil hat on my head. The potential there is for someone in the government, a politician, to be like, look at this number. Scary.
The Census Bureau will always tell you whether your participation is mandatory or voluntary, and we encourage you to answer all questions asked. That's weird. It says both. What the heck? And this is census.gov. So, because they'll call or visit you. Okay. Yeah, but still, it'll tell you whether your participation is mandatory or voluntary. What does that even mean? So some is mandatory, some is voluntary? Like what?
I think at the end of the day, the point of the census is to gather accurate data on the population. And this just seems like a roadblock to that data.
Why?
Because, like I said, people are going
more detailed?
People are going to avoid filling out the census if they're undocumented.
Sure.
That's just that's the impression that I get.
But that's what I mean by, like, it says mandatory. What if someone knocks on your door and they're like, nah, it's mandatory for you? It's like, how does it, where's the line
if you're
there?
Undocumented, how do they know that?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
How do they even serve you a census?
I don't know.
That's my point.
It is a great question. Now, there are ways. I mean,
I'm sure there are ways.
There's ways to pull
time to lightly
cell data and address data and like all this data together to really get like a pretty big picture of who's where and who's active and like employee data, because I don't know. I guess not with an illegal though, because but a work visa, yeah, they can. I don't know. This is interesting. I think
here on the late Google, I've got non-citizens under age 35 from 2010 to 2012. That was issued in 2014, and even in here, right? If you were to take this number of, well, here's all ages, so a little over 7% of our population is non-citizen. So it seems like they kind of do something like this already. I just don't know how they get that number, unless when they go off of non-citizen, it is specifically those who are here legally that are not citizens.
And if I may say too, it feels like we live in this era, and I think this administration is a little bit at fault because they do politicize more than past administrations have. But I feel like we live in this era, like we're diving into this question, and I'm really not. Like people got like really outraged about this, and I'm like, I'm not seeing where the outrage is. Maybe I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot more to know, especially if you work there. But like, I just felt like there was a lot of outrage about this. Chad even brought it up and was like, "Oh, look what happened." Like, why? Why was there outrage?
So
I don't know.
Where do you think the outrage is coming from? Like, if you had to put yourself in that shoes of that person who is right raging, if you will.
Sure.
Where do you feel like that's coming into play?
It's probably, I mean, the Trump administration has been pretty obvious with their attitude towards.
Yeah, they've been hostile for sure. That's a part of it.
So it begs the question: why add this? What are your intentions with the data? What do you want to do with it? And how does that help the conversation?
Right, and
I think people are just skeptical of their intentions.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to be, but I also think it's fair to be skeptical of the federal government all the time. So, I don't really know if that should be, or I hope that's nothing new.
Scratch that, all government.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, all government. Well, yeah, all big entities. Period. A government is a big entity, right? All big entities. But I think Chad's right. When you look at the history of what this administration has said and done, then yeah, I think it does matter more. I don't know where I'm trying to decide if the outrage was everybody thought all the illegals were going to get kicked out, because that's obviously not true.
Right.
Like, what are they outraged about? Data that's clearly already collected in some way. Caleb just showed us.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that was from the U.S. Bureau,
right,
or Census Bureau or whatever.
Right. So I'm not really too sure where this cascade of upsetness is coming from.
There are definitely pros, right? More data, in my opinion, is always better than less data. Number one, right? Sure. Number two, some of those pros could be if we did if I'm not mistaken, it's the Dreamer Act, where we would just grandfather in whoever's already here, just say, okay, here you go, you're a citizen, but from here on out, you have to do this. That would give us a somewhat accurate number of, okay, if we did the Dreamer Act, and again, I could be missing on that, but if we did something of that nature, this is how much it would cost because we're in the neighborhood of this many kids.
Yeah.
So there can be pros to this data, right? It can give us a real number as to, okay, if we grandfathered every illegal kid under the age of 18 right now, this is how much it would cost. This is the impact to our economy, to our taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to just sit here and say, hey, again, tinfoil hat, like the government's trying to get people. It's also possible that this data could be used positively in future administrations.
Yeah.
Or maybe even this one. I don't want to throw Trump completely under the bus.
And maybe in ways that are somehow helpful. I don't know how, but I don't know. I can never think of all the variables at once. So I don't know. So
I remain cautious.
I also stop saying the tinfoil hat thing. You're fine. I think that you're just more. I think that when you say things like that, you bring awareness to the fact that, like, hey, maybe not all things government, large entities, but especially government does are good. And I think that's true. I think that's very true. So you're fine.
No, I know, but for a lot of people, even remotely going down that causes this rabbit hole of, oh my God, the government, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I also kind of say it tongue in cheek as well. To be fair,
I know. And that's why I said that. And I also think we live in such a tribal society where these fringe people that are the loudest voices, they make everything so black and white when nothing's black and white. Stop it with this crap. Like,
well, there's a
Jesus.
few things that are black and white, but not nearly as many as people make it out to be.
I will make a note of that and ask Caleb in the future what's black and white. That'll be another topic for another day.
Well, black and white, right? We need oxygen to live, yes?
Oh, yeah, but that's not like a controversial thing. You scum, but you're not wrong.
It's 51%, okay? 51%, just remember that.
Jesus Christ. You're not wrong. All right, we can move on to this Jimmy Carter video. And even, Chad, did you see the Obama video I posted? Or
What?
No?
Did you post another video?
No, I posted one not necessarily for the conversation, but just it was a good conversation of two people who disagreed, but they had a respectful conversation. That's all. But specifically, what I liked was, and you guys both saw the Carter one or not?
Oh, I didn't see that.
I watched most of the Carter one.
Okay, so specifically, where I want to start the conversation about that one is he says, and we've talked about this over and over again, and it's probably not a disagreeing discussion, just more of a discussion, but he says in it, he says, like, look, in 1976, I didn't even fundraise at all. Like, we had public financing, and he thinks that was a lot better of a thing. He's like, all this money that just gets poured into politics has bastardized it in a certain way. And I think that's right. I think, also, he's sharp as a whip, and he's like 93, but
real quick.
Yeah.
Let's give it up for this guy. Let's give it up for this guy and President Obama.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
That whole dialogue
is incredible.
Hopefully Cyril throws that link in the comments there, or in the description. But this is the way political discourse is supposed to be. You know? And even at the end, when the president literally is like, listen, I get where you're coming from, even though we don't agree, and I probably won't get your vote, I still want to fight on behalf of you.
Right.
Just ending the conversation in that manner. Just
right.
Again.
And I'm not interested in necessarily throwing only Trump under the bus for this, because it's not just him. But there's a lot of politicians these days that just maybe not even politicians, but just discourse in general that doesn't happen that way. It's so disappointing. And we were just talking about how things aren't black and white, and a lot of times are complicated. You can tell in that discussion, because the guy definitely felt like, who knows why, the guy definitely felt like what Obama was doing wasn't going to help his small business, right? He definitely felt like he didn't think Obama was the right choice for him or fighting for him. But during the discussion, I think Obama kind of showed him, like, or not showed him, but he kind of was like, hey, this stuff's complicated. Like, he started talking about like the numbers and like, and he even said smaller than 250 and above 250, right?
He even said, like, I wouldn't know your numbers, but the potential there is for XYZ.
And I know Chad didn't see it, or probably what I wrote in the Hangouts about it, but specifically what incensed me about that video was the title of it. It's that kind of internet crap that just makes me mad. The title is like Barack Obama talking to Joe the idiot. This is what happens when stupid people do not understand English. That's so hateful.
Yep.
Like it's ridiculously hateful. The dude says in the conversation, like, yeah, he definitely brought an opinion to that. Not an opinion, but he definitely brought a view to that conversation of like, I don't think Obama is fighting for me. I don't think he's right for me. But he also says in the conversation, like, I've been working hard as a plumber for like 15 years. I've done a lot for society. Like, I busted my butt. I got this business. And I also don't blame this Joe guy for looking out for himself. If you do feel threatened by someone, regardless of why, that's okay. Just have a conversation about it, and in that conversation, hopefully, you not really that like your mind changes. I'm not asking everyone's mind to change. I'm just, at least hopefully it's a reasonable discourse conversation where you at least don't think that like everything Obama does is hateful or everything that Trump does is hateful. Like, there's things that I don't think everything Trump does is hateful, Chad. Why'd you say?
What? No, I was agreeing with your sentiment.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I wasn't discontent with what you were saying.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think my frustration with discourse today is that instead of having rational conversation based on the potential of what could happen in the future, we tend to be, and we are humans, this is what we do, but we tend to be reactionary in nature. So for example, right, all of these shootings, right, as soon as a shooting happens, and I don't want to,
no, you go ahead.
Going to
You're
sound
fine.
hypocritical, but
No,
I don't want to be this person, but to sit here and be like, oh, somebody was shot, I need to stand, and this is going to sound horrific, but I need to stand on the side of the people who died because of gun violence, and that this is the ultimate right. This is my moral compass, and people have died, and therefore that's it.
Yeah,
we can't have a conversation because people died, which is, I get it, people die, but unfortunately, whether you like it or not, people die every fucking day.
So
every single day people die, and that does not give you the right to stand on that event and to scream out
anything is hateful, right? Because
not
even a
just anything
conversation,
hateful, but like ignoring the fact that we need to have a genuine conversation. Because although I am not for banning all guns,
I don't think anybody is. But keep going.
I think a lot. I think quite a few people.
A lot. All guns.
Quite a few. Quite a few.
Not close to any majority. I would
not
say
not even close to any majority.
Maybe 10%.
Either way, the
That's
point here
high.
is,
yeah, okay.
The point here is instead of having true conversation about our culture, where we come from, especially our American history, which, let's be honest, is intertwined with the gun.
Yeah.
And you just can't just get rid of it. I mean, you could, but
no.
Prohibition worked really well. We're sitting here and we're standing on top, and we do the same thing with every event, right?
So
let's be honest. Like, and again, I'm gonna sound like a shitbag, but 9/11. Oh, we need to go in and fuck some motherfuckers up. Like, wait, hold on.
Well,
let's sit down. Let's pause. Let's have a rational discussion about what the next step is.
Well, and Iraq, right? The Iraq War came out of that, which I don't know how many people would look back and not that it was black and white the wrong decision, but definitely like I'm not really too sure what was going on there. But I think, Caleb, do you chafe at the March of Our Lives? Do you chafe at stuff like that? Does that stuff make you upset when people get in the streets and march for a cause? Does that make you upset? Do you think those people don't want to have a conversation? Because I would disagree with you aggressively. But go ahead if you do.
I think that people that go out there are in a lot of ways under, and this is just strictly an opinion, the majority of those people feel pressure from friends and family to participate in something like that. And I don't think that's the most appropriate way.
Why do you think that?
Really?
Why do you think that? Do you see video of them saying that? Have you talked to people? Why do you think that?
I get, again, this is an opinion, but it's a sense. It's a sense of,
okay.
When people do have videos of conversations, very few of those conversations really go into depth into any sort of true discussion of what maybe could be done or true impactful statements. It's very, to them, it's very black and white. And it's black and white because I'm here with so-and-so who's affected by this because of whatnot. It's not, I'm here because this is my belief, this is my ideal. I don't think they're steadfast in what they're truly marching for. I think they're marching because, again, there's a lot of social pressure in a lot of these circles, I feel, that, if you don't march with us, like, you're a Nazi.
I disagree.
Come on.
Okay. No, let him finish.
That's probably an extreme, but that's also a feeling. It's also a sense. Extreme, okay. And I think that you get the same thing the other side, right? If you don't march, like, how many of those guys that marched in Charlottesville do you think are truly steadfast in that lifestyle?
Oh my gosh! To be that hateful, I think. And by the way, there was only.
I think a lot of it is an acceptance, an identity. Like, these people accept me, so I will follow them. It's not necessarily I truly believe in this.
Yeah, but that you could say that for most all things. What? What do you mean? What kind of argument is that?
Well, what I'm saying is that
people adopt certain social groups and habits because it gives them an identity.
Right. And
what I'm saying is, fuck off, grow up, come up with your own thoughts. Have a genuine
don't
discussion
march.
about things.
Don't
I'm not
protest.
saying don't march. I'm not saying don't march.
What are you saying?
Yeah, I don't know what
I'm
you're saying.
I'm saying that anytime it looks like, and again, this could just be perception based on
You're fine. Go ahead. No worries.
media and YouTube and things like that, but it seems like anytime you watch, I shouldn't say anytime, quite a few times that you watch these videos and people say, I'm marching because I think we should get rid of guns. Like, okay,
that's ignorant.
There's no depth there. There's no.
Yeah. There's
that's what I get frustrated with. That's where I'm coming from.
That's black and white, and that's stupid.
Black and white is to point at black and white is to point at people who are like that, who don't know what really their beliefs are and are just there to be there, and assuming that that's a large portion of them. I don't think it is. I think those are the people we look at because they're marching for something and they don't know what they're doing. Like there's so many videos. I love it. I love it when it comes to a new presidential race because there's always these videos that come out of people going to the opposition's rally and asking like basic, simple questions to people standing in the line waiting to get into the rally, right, for some candidate. And they're showing just these people who have no idea what they're talking about. These people who don't know what the Bill of Rights is. But
how much of that do you think is like? What do you think if we had to put a number percentage ballpark? If you went to a rally for whatever cause, for whatever candidate, what number of those people would be? I don't want to use the term
absolutely clueless like that.
So Caleb, I think for me, when I hear you say that, it would worry me if we still lived in a world where these people who are marching are violent, but they're not, right? So if you're not violent, I don't care. I don't care. You're fine. Now, are you going to reach your goal of getting what you want? No, but I don't care. Like I can choose to someone can bring up, oh, the March for Our Lives happened, and I can just be like, so. And just move on.
Okay, so
and I think you're sounding maybe not crazy alarm bells, but you're sounding some alarm bells about gun control, and you've mentioned not necessarily in a pod before, but the slippery slope. But so I think, and this is now turning into a gun control debate, and that's perfectly fine. I think that
wait, hold on.
Hang on.
Okay.
I think that my only question, because you're asking like, what are they doing? How are they changing things? How should they? Right. Let's talk about the kids who actually did survive the shooting, right? Nobody else who might be there because of pressures.
Right.
What should we do? Should we do nothing? I don't think so. So what is the answer? No, I know it's not. I'm asking you, what should we do? Look at the situation at Parkland.
Okay,
Tell me how we can do better. Sure.
I will answer that. But first, I do feel like I have to preface what we were talking about. So you were saying like the whole black and white thing, how many people marching. More specifically, what I'm talking about is people who participate in these things who are ignorant to the situation, or maybe not even ignorant, barely glancing the surface of an issue. That's where I'm like, come on, guys, what the fuck are you doing? Like, yeah, you're marching, but like, what do you want? You barely know what you're marching for. You know what I mean? That's the people that I chase.
All of them. Oh, okay. So you're saying, I mean, I guess so.
And that's my frustration. My frustration is it feels like most of those people haven't gone in depth, like, and I guess not everyone is like us, but like I enjoy these talks because it allows me to really test my beliefs.
Sure, me too.
I'm throwing it at the wall, or I'm throwing it at you guys and saying, okay, tear this apart.
Yeah.
I guess my point is you could look at any big movement in history and see that people filled those movements that had no idea why they were part of that movement or truly understood what was going on and just kind of felt impassioned to join and be a part rather than really understanding it.
Sure.
So I don't get that gripe.
I'm a liberal. What does a liberal mean? You emphasize freedom of the individual, freedom of speech, freedom of protest. I don't care. As long as you're not hurting someone, I don't care. I can choose to be like, whatever. Now, it's a different conversation if you feel like your values are being attacked. So I know that Caleb has said before, and he can tell me if I'm speaking out of turn.
I'd agree with that.
Their end goal is not something that Caleb necessarily agrees with, right? So maybe, maybe if you're feeling like it's hard to turn away and say, well, I don't care when you think that something's going to happen that you don't like. And I get that, dude. I'm biased in that way too. Chad is, we all are. But I also think now let's talk about what's actually going to happen, because Caleb's brought up this march, and do they even know what they're talking about? There's not much that has actually happened. So if someone wants to tell me like they're coming for our guns,
wait a
where?
minute.
How? What is going on?
First of all, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay,
Second
fair.
of all, what I'm saying is you have so many people marching and yet nothing happened. And why has nothing happened? Let's talk about that.
Because special interests.
Two things to me. Number one
Sure.
is absolutely 100% special interest, which, again, we've said this probably 1,000 times. We all agree with. That needs to go.
It's true.
That needs to go. I feel safe saying we all agree with that. But number two
Absolutely.
is that when people do go to the voting block or don't go to the voting block, they're not actually keeping these things in mind and looking at politicians and saying, how did you vote on an issue that is important to me? They're not doing that. They're going, here you go. Or they're not going at all, more likely.
Yeah.
Almost more likely, or 50-50. They're not even going at all. So to me, I find it hypocritical if you are out there marching, talking about how you want change, and you don't even go to the fucking voting block. So that's more.
So, and I agree with you, but you're assuming. You're assuming they don't vote. You're assuming these people.
Well, okay. I think it's
so they all
safe to say. No. I think it's statistically safe to say that 50% of the people that marched probably didn't vote.
Really? Why would you assume that? People who are
some politically active people, man. Because
that's what I was going to say. Like, whether or not you agree with them, people who are willing to go out to Washington D.C.
pretty charged
to take. These are people who are motivated. These are the people who are voting. If you want to say that the side they lean on, a large percentage of Democrats don't vote, sure, but that's a different conversation. I find it hard to believe that these kids who are this motivated aren't at least voting. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No. I think because it's not just the kids that's going, right? Who else is going to these marches? It's their grandparents, it's their parents, their aunts, their uncles, right? They're friends of their aunts and uncles and parents and grandparents, right? And how many of those people truly voted?
You think in this age of hyper-partisanship and the fact that you can't change a lot of people's minds, you think they're just kowtowing to this pressure and just going? It's hard for me to fathom. I'm not saying there's none of them, though. Of course there is. I'm not saying there's none of them. That's ridiculous because I'm assuming at that point too. But I don't know, man. I don't know.
There's something
you're right. I will absolutely concede the fact that people who are willing to go to a march are probably much more politically active than the average person.
Sure.
Though, I would also say, on top of that, even people who are aware of the political system, like, let's say, I don't know, our uncle, for example, doesn't vote, yet knows quite a bit about what's going on, right? Or at least has an educated opinion on these things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fall into that category, a lot more than we think.
Yeah, maybe.
So, I don't know. Yeah. I chafe, I guess, at the dedication of an individual. And it varies from person to person, but you guys know me well enough to know that I'm an all or nothing type of person.
Right. And it can be for anything. Like, so let's say 2010 Tea Party. Like, how many of those people were ignorant? You know, maybe there was a good portion of them. Who knows?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't just stay confined in one area. And that's true. So,
and I think that's where in politics I get frustrated because in order to win in politics, you don't have to have most likely your base is not, or the largest percentage of your base isn't like fully educated and informed on what it is that you're doing, right? You have to win over a bunch of people who are more partisan voters, right? You have to do that in order to win. And that's what burns me.
That could be a product of a two-party system too, because when there's only two choices, you're just like, oh, well, geez, I'm mostly a Republican or I'm mostly a Democrat, but all three of us know that there are things on both sides we don't agree with. But you have to sit there in the polls and be like, well, am I going to choose the shit sandwich or the poop soup? Like, I don't know.
But then, as our relative pointed out to me as I talked to him about his political/media atheism, he said, no, fuck you. I'm not making that choice. I'm not going to vote. I refuse to sit here and make that choice between a poop soup and a shit sandwich. And I think a lot of people are on that, and that's what frustrates me. But either way, let's go back if you want.
That's fair.
If you want to talk about political media atheism, we can talk about that, or we can go back to the gun thing.
Yeah, so as far as the gun thing goes, and as far as everything that's happened since Parkland, there's just... It just feels like nothing moves. So if we want to have a responsible conversation and sit down and really try to figure it out, I think that's the right thing to do. I don't think that slandering the kids or slandering the people who are slandering the people who want gun rights is the right thing to do. And that seems to be a lot of what happens. It's just throwing stones at the other side. It's like, what can we do? What can we actually do? Should we put metal detectors at every single school in the country? Maybe. That's something that we could probably do. Maybe. Should we raise the age of buying an AR to 21? Maybe. Because if you literally did that, the way that he got the gun, not saying, and I understand there's an argument to be made about, he could have gotten a gun a different way. That's fine. But maybe the way that he acquired the gun is he, at 19, walked into a store and bought it. So at least start there. Maybe someone who's under 21 doesn't necessarily have the maturity yet. Maybe some do, but maybe a lot don't. And, you know, I want to focus on things that can actually make a difference. I think Florida raised their age to 21 on those things. Good for them. They did a couple other things. But even Trump, who is sometimes he's a super panderer to special interests, sometimes he's not. He plays it when he wants it. And this time, after the Parkland shooting, I think he was really moved by these kids and what happened and the things that happened. So he said, you know what? Let's be reasonable. He said, let's raise the age to 21 and let's ban bump stocks. Guess what happened? A lot of people on the right and the NRA were like, you know what? Fuck you. We should have everything we want. And then it all goes to hell.
I think that's the ballsiest thing Trump has ever done.
Yeah, seriously.
Because there were a lot of his core supporters.
Yeah. Huh? One thing you do have to say as well is, like, how many other politicians would have done that?
Obama did it. Obama cried after Newtown. It was like, let's get this done. Nothing happened.
Yeah, but hold on. We're talking. I should rephrase.
Sure.
How many of politicians go against the party?
Their special interests? Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Fair. So Obama wasn't against the party line. That one, that's fair. That context.
Not to take away the fact that he was moved by it. Of course he was.
Right.
But
you're right. It's easier for a Democrat to do that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But then he walked it back. But then Trump walked it back.
Well, that shows you how much pressure is.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about the gun thing, and I'll say it right and fair and foremost, I'm very much a freedom person.
Sure.
I think people have the right to have whatever it is that they want.
Whatever?
Okay. Anything? It's aggressive.
Well, I also am someone who believes in personal responsibility, right? And I also can acknowledge that not everyone has that ability to do that. Sure. So that being said, I am willing to come to the table and say, okay, let's put some restrictions down, but these restrictions, we're not eliminating anything. What we should be saying, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is here's the license, and this is the process to get said license, to get said item, right? We do that with vehicles. We do that with, and not only do we do that with vehicles, right? If you look at cars, for example, right? You have a motorcycle license, which is different than a car license, which is different than a semi-truck license, which is different than a bus license, et cetera, right? And you have to take different courses and prove that you have an aptitude to handle different situations on different vehicles to get different licenses.
Right.
I'm okay, absolutely. I'm 100% okay coming to the table saying, okay, I'm good with this.
Right.
What I want and what I fear is people saying, okay, we put these things in place. Oh my God, another shooting happened. We need to take away guns. And what I feel that needs to happen. Go ahead.
Putting those things in place stops them.
Yeah, it would greatly reduce mass shootings, depending on what we've seen.
I completely agree with you. You are 100% correct. But in today's political climate, if we put something in place and does not work, what do people do?
Gun culture in America is never going to go away. I mean, there will never be.
Hold on, you didn't answer my question.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, say it again.
No.
Certain politicians will try and capitalize on it, especially people who want to see guns go away completely. But that certainly doesn't represent the population.
And it doesn't. And for me, where we have to start this conversation, just like with any conversation, is that we have to understand that just because we do something does not mean the problem will go away. The goal here should be an immense reduction of the potential to harm others, but not, because it never will, eliminate all harm, right? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, but we're having
it is,
so many mass shootings a year. If you have one every 5 years because of these restrictions, nobody's going to be jumping up to their feet and saying we need to ban all guns.
I think you would be surprised.
Certainly not a majority of the population.
I think you would be surprised. Not the majority.
A majority of the population.
No, but still
that's
a very
how democracy works.
So I understand that, but
that's what I'm saying. Guns are never going to
go off of that premise, right? We're still. I mean, I haven't looked at the polls lately, but you're still probably 60-40, 60 against guns, 44.
All guns.
That's a pretty big...
Banning all guns?
Just the general notion of should we do something with guns. I'll bet you it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60-40, where 60% of people want to do something about this, and 40% are saying, no, let bygones be bygones.
We're talking about banning all guns.
No, we're not doing that. You can't go to that extreme. We're talking specifically about...
That's what you were referencing when you said if we put these restrictions in place and there's another shooting that happens, people are going to want to ban all guns.
Well, do you disagree with that statement?
But what happens? I think what Chad's saying, and I agree with it, is what happens matters, right? So, Caleb, I understand slippery slope, right? You've said that before, and I think that's true. But it's only true if it keeps happening. Like when 17 children die, like you're gonna get a big response because that's bad.
Yes,
right?
You're right. But let's say they
don't have a right to respond to something.
That's not what I'm
happening?
saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, fair. Go
ahead.
What
I'm saying is that if we're gonna have this conversation, we need to acknowledge from the get-go that not everything is going to be perfect, and regardless of what changes we make, there is still the potential for someone to kill other people.
I think that's right.
With a gun.
And I think that has to be a part of the conversation. Yes, I do.
And for me, when it comes to liberals or Democrats or whatever you want to call them,
sure,
that's where you should start that conversation. Listen, we are acknowledging that it's not perfect.
Right. So I see what you're saying.
Let's try to do something. And I think if you came from that premise, you would have more buy-in.
Yes, but and two, I see what you're saying, because the response from a bunch of children dying is always the one side, and because I was about to say, well, you also have to give the other side some credit too for what happened and the fact that we should try to do better. But I think what you're saying is we already do because of the outcry does that, and we need to make sure that when that outcry happens, we understand the other side of the table where it's like, yes, everybody wants to save children's lives. Like, it's ridiculous to say nobody does. When I see some of these, and it's only a few. I always want to make this clear. When I see hateful things, it's only a few people. When I see a few people say like, they just want children to die, or that's ridiculous. Nobody wants that. That's so disingenuous and dumb. Nobody should be saying that. So I understand what you're saying. So my question is, my question is, hang on. My question is, or you continue on. We're not getting that. So why aren't we getting that? Where is the system broken here? Like, why aren't we getting that? And I think it starts, the fish rots at the head, bro. It starts with our politicians. Our politicians refuse to have that conversation. That conversation doesn't begin to happen because one side's extreme and the other side's extreme. And they keep getting pushed in both directions. And it's despicable. And then it trickles down into the population from there. The fish rots at the head, and it's dumb.
I also think that when it comes to people with their extreme views, again, whether it's right or left, and I don't like generalizing like that a whole lot, but those who are completely against any type of weaponry whatsoever, and those are like, if you can afford a bazooka, go for it, right? Those are your two extremes.
Sure.
Tactical nuke. People, because of how loud they are, also, tactical nuke, right? Because of how loud they are, I wonder how much of that gets swayed in the mind of the politician. Because I imagine that when you, as a politician, go to your office one day and you have a bag full of mail or an inbox full of email, I have to imagine that the large part of that email is what you do wrong, right?
Right, and it's also the charged people that are extreme because they're the ones sending the emails, we need to figure out a way how to get the silent majority center reasonable people back into making these decisions or having these conversations. I agree.
Well,
it's true.
That has a lot to do with the way we
if you're a representative of 300,000 people in your district and you get 1,000 emails after the shooting happens, What do you think those emails are? They're mostly just people who are probably like, get rid of the guns. This is ridiculous. We should just, because they're charged. They're really emotional. They're extreme. They're really involved in stuff like this because they have such. Meanwhile, me and you and Caleb are just waking up, tying our shoes, going to work, trying our fucking best. We don't have time to do all this and this, Nobody gets heard from us.
I like how you say that ironically because we're currently talking about it. But anyway.
Well, you know what I mean, though.
No, I know.
So.
I think, again, the whole premise, though, and the other reason why I get frustrated with what we were talking about in, I don't know, I'm going to use a shitty word again, but like the sheep type of people who are just like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to go march with you, or I'm going to do. When I had that conversation this weekend with our uncle, who's currently abstaining from any politics and or media whatsoever,
good for him.
Is like when I was having that conversation with him, I said, why are you doing this? And he said, well, because it's worthless. I'm frustrated. I don't care anymore. Like, I'm over it. It's done. Sure. I can't change anything. And I said, but the fact that you are a sensible person saying I recognize that I can do nothing is all the more reason for you to do something. As a sensible center person saying I'm willing to listen to everything that is happening or come up with an educated opinion or a nuanced opinion on how to maybe solve a problem, that's what we're pushing out.
And, we got to go out there and not even be active in politics, but go out there and just talk to people and like be a part of the community.
I think that's a big thing.
And, I agree.
What's difficult too is like if you want to keep going right in the workplace. I don't know. Marching, right? And Chad, you and I have had this conversation. And I think Cyril and I have had this conversation of being in that box, right? With all like-minded people, all spouting the same thing. Like, it's easy to just be like, oh, yeah, you're right, because I'm right, and we say the same thing.
Sure.
When you get that challenge is me talking to you saying, no, we shouldn't do that, and you saying, no, you're ridiculous. Like, okay, let's start from the same premise. You and I both agree that we have a problem with guns. We can both agree there, right?
Yeah.
Now we can have
shooting.
Shootings, yeah, fair enough. We have a problem when it comes to deranged people using weaponry to kill people in schools, specifically.
Sure. Yeah.
We both agree that something needs to be done about it. Now you and I can have a true, nuanced discussion on how to fix that problem. But we don't start from that premise anymore. We don't start from the same place saying, okay, we agree that there's a problem. We agree this is the problem. Now let's figure out how we do it together, how we fix it. Because you have your ideas. I have mine. Let's flesh it out in the world of discussion / debate / whatever else you want to call it. That has gone away, I feel like. And I only feel like that because, again, I think when it comes to the politicians, and I would have to admit that if I were a politician, I would be guilty of reading these letters saying, Jesus fucking Christ, how many people want to get rid of every single gun ever?
Right.
I would start to feel like, well, shit, this is what people want.
Also, that's so impossible, but whatever.
Well, neither here nor there. The point would be is that they would want nothing short of
right.
You can have a cap gun. That's about it.
I would also assume, though, that there's plenty of people who are fiercely writing in opposing any sort of progress or move forward on gun control.
Oh, for sure.
Representatives.
But
again, you don't have anybody. You don't have anybody that's sort of sensible or middle ground, or writing letters and sending them, or even having an opinion. Because it seems to me this day that the right and the left can be so far that if you take a middle ground, you're just going to get attacked by everybody. You know what I mean? Both right and left. Middle ground isn't good enough these days.
Nah, we'll make it great again.
Well, and I think the way to combat that. To me, the way to combat that
is for people to get off their fucking high horses.
True. Well, I thought
and how do you take somebody off their high horse, Chad?
I couldn't tell you.
Fuck reasonable conversation in that way. And that sounds ridiculous coming from me after everything we just talked about.
No, you're fine.
Is going to those people and saying, bring your idea forward.
Right. That works too.
Are you too scared to bring your idea to public opinion so that we can hash it out? Because if you're too scared to do that, walk the fuck out.
No, I don't think these people are scared to bring. I don't think these people are scared to bring these ideas forward, but they do so in a crowd of their own. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Instead of bring these ideas forward to a debate, let's have a conversation. Let's have a place where we both are pitted against each other and trying to describe why our idea is the best or why our avenue is a better way to go. But people, again, the problem is people live in their spheres, man. People live in their echo chambers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's bad, and it has a lot to do with the way we consume media these days.
Because the internet will do great things as far as tolerance towards others who don't look like you, right? Because we've now gone from growing up in a community where you only see one kind of person. Well, not maybe one kind of person, but we've gone from back in the day where you only interact with a few kinds of people and you see people who are different very rarely, and you think like, oh, they're different. Why are they different? And I think hatefulness used to spread from that. But, now we have the internet, and you can see people in China and what their lives are like, and you can talk to people, you can do all these things. Right. Now, in the short term, we're having hard times with the internet as far as dealing with fringe people and how loud their voice is. But I think in the long term, it'll do a lot for tolerance and saying, hey, just because someone looks different or thinks different doesn't mean that I should hate them. It just means that you should have a conversation and try to understand where they're coming from. That doesn't mean they're right. Don't get me wrong. But just so much hatefulness, man. It's.
But I think that's where what we do here has the potential to evolve into.
I agree.
I mean, let's be honest, right? I tend to lean slightly right, and you guys tend to lean slightly left.
Yeah.
And I think what I enjoy about this specifically is that we get to have the opportunity to hash that out. I mean, I think and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption here that you guys would be in agreement that having some type of licensing system is probably a good idea for weapons.
Yeah, of course, dude.
Right?
Now, I'm sure some people would be like, well, how hard would it be? And they would start chafing at it. But that's okay. We can have a conversation. Like, it doesn't need to be, you have to wait 4 years and then I sniff your butthole, then you can get an AR. Like, no. But they're definitely like you have to do a lot to get a license to drive a vehicle. You have to wait a while. You have to get a permit.
You have to wait until you're 16. You have to go down.
Right.
You have to take a test. Well, in New York State, right? You have to take a test. Once you complete that test, you get a permit. Right? And you have to have a permit for, what is it now, 6 months?
Yeah,
or a year?
I think so.
And then after that time frame, you have to go and take a driving test with someone who is certified to teach you how to drive a vehicle.
Yep.
Right. And the way I envision this is that I go, or I can do it online, right? I fill out this online application or in person, however you want to do it, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I go and I take a written test that says, okay, what would you do in this scenario? What would you do in that scenario? What are you supposed to do with this? What are you supposed to do with that?
Sure.
Right. And then once I complete that test, it gets submitted. I have a 6-month waiting period. Once it's over, I go back in and I take a training course as well as a test at the end of the training course.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I show that I can unload, reload, operate a weapon safely for whatever particular weapon I'm applying for. Right. Shotgun, rifle, pistol, etc. Right. Once I complete that test, I'm good to go. I have my license. I can purchase the weapon. And now the government can safely say, right, and this is, to me, where the big thing is when it comes to criminal charges for things that happen with weapons, I can say, as the government, if I am the overbearing government that I am, I can say, Cyril, when you took this test, we told you that you had to lock away your gun. Since you didn't lock away your gun and your 18-year-old got a hold of it and killed a bunch of people, you are now held.
Some responsibility there for sure.
A lot of responsibility because we fucking told you. But I would say a lot. I mean, I would say the responsibility.
And look, I think what you're saying right now makes a lot of sense, and I'd go one step further. In that permit waiting period, you know how you can give veterans jobs? How about you take the competent ones that are willing to teach people, gun safety? And if you go to 4 or 5 times to some government established gun training area where they hire the veterans to teach gun safety and show you how to work the weapon, all these things along those lines too, that person who's training you will also get to know you, hopefully enough, maybe not all the time, but a lot better. They'll get to know if you're like a crazy person or not. You know what I'm saying? Like that interaction would be good. You would get trained on a weapon. They'd get to know you, and if they had reservations about if you should have a weapon or not, they could speak up when you go get your license. Like, a lot of that makes sense to me, man. A whole lot of that makes sense.
I get iffy on that part.
Maybe that's too far. But I don't know. That makes sense.
If someone's going to make a claim,
what do you mean 6 months waiting though? 6 months just sitting around waiting? I don't know. That's kind of stupid.
You do that with your pistol permit.
In New York State, you sure do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, well, maybe we could maybe we could get some jobs to some of these homeless vets. Not homeless.
Well, my whole point, right?
Jobless.
Hold on. Let's go back, right? The whole point with the waiting period is if you Cyril, if you have a waiting period, let's say I'm a 19-year-old kid that wants to go shoot up a school, and I'm heated and I'm ready to go, and I can't go buy a weapon because I got to wait 6 months after I take my test, and this shit gets old. I don't do it.
Well, I think that's
look. I think where I agree with. Well, hang on.
I get what you're saying, but
I think where I agree.
I don't think it's quite that simple.
I agree with.
I'm not saying it's that simple, Chad. What I'm saying is that the potential there to stymie someone from doing something very rash and very quickly.
But I also agree with the thought process that comes from usually the right, where it's like, look, if they want to harm people, they'll find a way. So no one is just going to wait. Not no one. But most crazy people wouldn't just sit there and wait 6 months. They try to acquire a weapon. The point is there's more deterrence, especially if when someone goes through that training and they are told you must lock it up. You have to lock it up. And if we do that and we educate more and we put these deterrents in place, less of these shootings will happen. Nobody thinks it's going to be perfect. That's dumb. I don't want to have that conversation. It won't be. But I think that, if it's locked, if you try to go buy one and you can't, and then you try to steal from your dad and it's locked, and you try to steal from your family members and it's locked, these are deterrents that are helpful, very helpful to make sure that these numbers of people killed go down. That's where I come from on that. That makes a lot of sense to me. So because like I said, I agree with the thought process of like, hey, they're gonna still try to find a way to get it done. But the point is, should we sit around and do nothing because we can't be perfect? No, we should try to do better. And I think that's steps in the right direction. So
for me, if you come from the premise that we are never going to, eliminate all gun deaths, you're just not going to. Do I agree we need to do something? Absolutely. But I want everyone to keep in mind. It's just like with
I think that's right.
Drinking and driving, right? We've made penalties for DUIs and DWIs so much harsher than it was 20 years ago.
Right.
Has it eliminated people dying from drinking and driving?
No.
No,
but it's helped.
That's a bit of a different. That's not a great analogy.
No, but
a good analogy would be
there have been
a good analogy would be if you got rid of alcohol. Would it eliminate DUI?
No, it wouldn't.
Well, no, that's a good point, Chad. Actually, that's probably a better point.
That's the analogy.
No, you're right.
That wouldn't work.
But this is where we get into the conversation.
No, I know. I'm just. That one gets me going because it would not work.
Well, technically, here's the thing, though, is that it kind of would. I mean, we've seen in Australia and we've seen in the UK that gun deaths do all but go down. But the question at that point is at what cost, though?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the point.
To say that it wouldn't all but eliminate it is kind of insincere, rather. But to me, that's not the point. The point is at what cost? At what cost are you willing to have that safety?
Right. Because we're also sacrificing things that we value in society with freedom and
specifically in America.
With freedom comes
call ourselves the land of free.
Exactly. I mean, we all are aware of that.
I'm not interested in going down, not just with guns, but with anything. I'm not interested in going down this like authoritarian route. Stupid. Just educate.
Right.
And accept the fact that sometimes bad things will happen, but we need to work towards, doing better if we can. That's all.
Personal responsibility.
Correct. It's very important. I would say 50-50, but no worries.
Listen, if you want true freedom, it comes with one of two things.
It does.
Some level of like anarchical state or true personal responsibility.
Well, and that's the thing. We find that middle ground because obviously we can't have absolute freedom. That would be a nightmare. So we find however we best define it. And America touts itself as the land of the free. So we like our guns as much as we like other things.
Do you know what I find interesting though? Is as we're having this discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're having this discussion without talking about the potential for technology to change the discussion completely.
Sure.
Right. Hold on. hold on, for DUIs, right? What happens when the self-driving car is a real thing?
Right.
What happens when, in order to fire a weapon, it has to have your DNA? What happens when, you see what I'm saying?
That's weird.
Yeah.
What happens?
There are handguns that recognize like fingerprint, palm print.
100%. They have biometrics.
Yeah. I know.
Absolutely. They have in
Interesting.
fact, when I was looking at buying a pistol,
yeah.
my whole thing with the pistol was I don't want to buy one until I have a locking mechanism that requires fingerprint access.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a locking mechanism that goes on the trigger that you can have up to 5 fingerprints for. So I could have my fingerprint and Alex's fingerprint, and then nobody else would be able to open that weapon.
Right. Right.
So it's quite possible that we don't even have to have this discussion. We can just go ahead and invest in the technology to make it happen properly.
Yeah. I mean, that comes with every discussion, though. Technology is always has. I mean, what conversation?
But Chad,
then what? Do we round up all the ones that aren't biometric because they're already gonna? They do exist. What are you gonna just?
No. You're right, Cyril. Hold on. But right now it's a trigger lock. It's not built into the weapon yet.
Right.
It's just a trigger lock.
I guess the idea is, Cyril, that the technology would get to the point where people would want that technology. Like if I pick up a pistol and it recognizes my palm print and I'm the only one that can fire that gun, that's pretty appealing. Nobody's going to steal my gun and shoot me with it. You know what I mean?
And it's a deterrent.
Well, it also comes with its own set of problems, right?
Does.
I mean, I'm sure in the future we'll be able to biohack or whatever crazy ass term.
Oh, that's a whole we
use these days, right? But if we're looking in the short term, right? If I go back to the whole DUI thing, listen, when my car can drive itself,
yeah, that's amazing.
Oh sure, I'll go.
When I can have a bar in my car,
right?
Sounds incredible.
Right. Because
that's not even a concern anymore.
Already lit when I left my house sober.
Dude, bars are going to lose so much money because everyone's going to pregame and then just hop in their self-driving cars. Bars are fucked because of self-driving cars. Somebody write that down. Write that down, dude.
Ridiculous conclusion.
I disagree.
Write that down.
No, I disagree. I say bars make more money. I say they make more money.
Yeah, but everyone's
more money because people have less fear of drinking and driving and getting in trouble.
All right, bar fights are going to go up. There's consequences, man. There's consequences with freedom.
There is, but if you're an idiot that gets into a fight at the bar, that's your problem.
That's natural selection. You're right.
Darwinism.
Look at all these predictions we're making. They're all going to come true.
They're not going to come true.
All right, well, that was solid discussion. I appreciate you, boys. And I got one more thing.
Sure.
One more thing, if you will so indulge me.
Absolutely.
What will the Buffalo Bills do in the first round of the draft? Now, I would like them to, if you haven't seen, they've traded up to number 12. They had the 21st and 22nd pick. They took one of them and they shipped one of their offensive linemen. I can't remember his name. Shipped it and they got the 12th pick.
They fleeced the Bengals and the Browns, in my opinion.
There you go.
Fleeced them.
So, with the 12th and the 21st pick, I think it's the 21st. Yeah, no, the 22nd pick. What will they do, and what are you guys hoping they will do? And I think that they better pick a quarterback, yo. If they don't pick a quarterback,
I don't know if they will.
Dude, why do you think they won't? Because they signed AJ McCarron. Give me a break, dude. Okay.
Chad, may I go first?
Sure.
Okay. Here's what I predict. My prediction is that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, they know who they want in this draft.
Okay.
They know exactly who they want. I don't know who that is, but they do, right?
Okay. I mean, they scout, so that would make sense.
They know what they want, right? Here's the thing, though. When the Jets made that trade to get to number 3 and damn near sold their future on it, they raised the cost of getting whoever that guy is at so high that it's not worth doing.
Yeah, they overpaid.
Potentially not worth doing it because the Jets overpaid so much because they got scared. Yeah. Here's what I see.
Okay.
If their guy falls down below pick 4 or 5, they have potential deals in place to make trades to get up to 6, 7, 8, or 9 in order to get that guy potentially. They already have those deals in place, and they will pull the trigger draft night if that guy falls down towards them. If he doesn't, they'll stay put at 12. The biggest thing about all of this, and the biggest thing that I think people have to remember, especially Bills fans, is that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are not in a position that they will lose their jobs this year if they don't win a lot. They're not.
No, they're not.
So
I agree with
why
that.
would they bet the house trading draft picks from next year if they know they're going to be here next year?
And I think that you bring up a really good point, because I think they are, and I think that's why they also signed AJ McCarron, right? Like they know they don't have to break the bank. And especially you make a good point with the Jets pick, dude. The Jets paid way too much to go up 3 spots, dude. It's insane.
And listen, and the Giants are at number 2. What would the Giants ask the Bills for? They would ask for 12, 22, both their first rounders, a second rounder, plus potentially a first rounder next year. That's way too much.
Yeah, that's way too much.
Way too much. And again, I have to reiterate that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are not in a position where they have to win next year or they'll be fired. So why would they bet the house on something that, I mean, if we're being honest, do you really think any of these quarterbacks are true franchise quarterbacks?
So that's a good question. Do you guys like any one specific one? I know none of us watch too much college football, but I'm a big fan of Baker Mayfield, and he's not even one of the top 2. So he might be available 12. You never know.
That's what I'm saying. I think that if he drops below 4, the Bills will try to make a move to get whoever that guy is. I don't know if it's Baker Mayfield. I don't know if it's Josh Rosen.
I don't want Josh Rosen. He didn't even win at UCLA. Didn't even win football games. Like, give me a break. I don't want them to pick Josh Rosen. I don't want them to pick Sam Darnold. Not that he didn't win, but I don't know. And I don't know about Josh Allen either. Wyoming's quarterback. Like, geez, I don't know much about college football, but what?
My prediction,
I don't know.
This is where I struggle, man, because I don't know what's going to happen draft day. Because draft day, it's crazy. But I have a feeling that Brandon Beane has potential deals in place, like tentative deals, or at least he knows what it would cost to get to a certain spot to get a certain guy if that guy falls that low. Yeah. Ultimately, I think they probably end up with Lamar Jackson or something like that.
Oh, dude, I'm glad you brought up Lamar Jackson. I don't want him at all. You're just going to get another Tyrod Taylor? Really? Come on. I feel like that's just another Tyrod. But whatever. We'll see. I wonder where
else would they pick?
They have this latest mock draft. They have them going at
Lamar
at 15.
4?
15.
Well, where are the Bills?
Oh, the Bills. They have the Bills trading up to 4. Using their 12th pick, their 22nd pick, and their 3rd round pick. Stupid. I don't want them to do that. Stupid.
That's a lot.
Dude, I also think look at Brandon Beane's first draft last year. Or maybe it wasn't his, but Sean McDermott was definitely there.
Yeah, it was Sean McDermott's pretty much.
Dude, and those picks were pretty good. Tre'Davious White was pretty fire.
Listen, I think
Zay Jones needs to grow into himself a little bit more, but
did you hear about Zay?
No, what happened?
Didn't he kick out a window in Vegas and fuck his foot up?
Oh yeah, did you see that video? That was so weird.
I didn't see the video.
Oh, that was. Oh, I saw it.
So, dude, that guy was on spice. He was definitely.
That's what they were saying.
Some weird synthetic stuff.
They were saying something like that happened, but apparently he fucked his foot up to the point where he might not be able to play the first few games.
That's crazy.
My knee-jerk reaction too was to be like spice because But dude, he could have been. Who knows? He could have been doing something much. I don't know, smoking meth or something. Who knows, man?
Well, you know what?
I don't know.
The claim I think from Zay Jones camp was somebody spiked his drink. Of course, right? Self-protection immediately.
Well, he was acting like he was on some sort of psychedelic hallucinogen.
That would also
be very out of it, and like that would always cut. Oh my god!
Oh, dude, it was weird. That would also be my first knee-jerk reaction, Caleb, is to be like, it's kind of like when a celebrity says, "My Twitter was hacked." It's like, really? But as far as a celebrity goes, if you're a celebrity, like sometimes people are out to get you. You never know. I think that's also
the tinfoil hat makes a return.
I love to.
It does.
I love to put it on right after Caleb takes it off.
If we ever get a
like
webcam
BS.
working, I'm making a tinfoil hat. By the way,
We should. We should. That's our goal. We're gonna get a nice studio, and the only thing that's gonna be there is the hat, and you just have to put it on when you're crazy.
No, No, I've already thought about this. I'm gonna wear a
You thought
balaclava.
about this?
I'm gonna wear a balaclava that has a skull on the bottom. You know what I'm talking about? Just like our logo, just like my logo. And then I'm also gonna have a tinfoil hat, so all you can see is my eyes, but you'll just have tinfoil and a skull-looking thing.
Oh gosh, that's gonna get real weird. There you go.
Yeah,
I think it smells like BS. It smells like BS.
Suit, I guess.
Oh my god.
I agree with you, Cyril. He's probably smoked some shit.
Yeah, it smells like
he's
BS.
getting into, and
we'll see. We'll see what the I don't know if there's an investigation or whatever. I guess we'll just.
That also has sparked the debate of let's just go ahead and let these guys smoke weed if they want to smoke weed.
Oh, for sure, dude. Who cares?
Actually, and I was gonna bring this up, but I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah.
And there's in Hawaii, apparently, people are being asked to turn in their guns if they're using medical marijuana. That was insane.
Wait, here's the question.
Someone doesn't understand what marijuana does to you. It makes you apathetic.
That blew my mind.
Sure, go ahead.
I feel like this is extremely important to talk about right now because you brought this up, Chad, and I didn't even think about it. Who would you rather have owning a gun? Somebody who has a medical marijuana card or somebody who takes antidepressants all day long? Go.
Medical marijuana card.
All day, right?
Oh, that's a tough conversation.
All day long.
That's a tough conversation.
Isn't it, though? But it's an important one because it's very prevalent in our society. It's very prevalent.
There's a lot of people that take antidepressants in this country. There's a lot of people that own guns in this country. There's going to be some overlap there. There might be a lot of overlap.
100%.
That's a tough conversation, dude.
But I think it's one that a lot of people
Chad's not wrong. Look at this shit.
A lot of people. Listen, a lot of people neglect this shit.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy.
And quite frankly, if I'm being honest, as we're talking about this, it's important to discuss how we treat mental health in our country.
It is
very important.
Yeah, of course it is.
Oh yeah, that's a huge part of the conversation
of the whole gun conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's there, whether you like it or not. They are very much intertwined.
And I understand when a certain faction of society bangs on the mental health issue drum. I get it. That's not wrong. But a lot of times that there's no solution with that. It's just, we need to look at mental health. Especially when Trump says it, just mental health. Okay, well, what do you want to do? And I think, Caleb, you brought up a great point earlier. What if that was part of the licensing process? That'd be helpful. A mental health evaluation. That'd be helpful. Give me some policy. Stop banging the I'm upset drum. Sure.
Here's my thing, though, right? And this is where, for me personally, it becomes very sticky. And that is, what do you consider a mental health risk? And that's where
it gets tough.
Ripping apart some crazy ass shit. Because number one, we're talking about psychology. And I don't want to call it not a science, because it definitely is a science.
Yeah.
But it's so specific to per person. Right? Like each person reacts to PTSD differently than the next person.
Oh, for sure.
Each person reacts to right. I'm just saying that's extremely important to have to talk about. And the difficulty there for me as a veteran, right? I own a shotgun and a 22. What if I have PTSD? Do you take that shotgun and 22 away from me? Or do you let me have that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to have that conversation. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about true, nuanced political opinion and conversation. Because the fact of the matter is there is no one size fits all.
Right.
And we have to, and this is why I always want to preface any gun control conversation with, you're never going to eliminate gun deaths.
And I
think attacks of any. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
What we want to do is mitigate that as much as possible within reason.
So I think we all agree that the simplest solution to have a better conversation over gun control and hot button issues like that is to make sure we understand the parameters of the conversation, right? So,
correct.
We need to make sure that we start off with banning all guns. Probably won't you guys know what I'm saying. I'm about to say it wrong, but like you need to understand where both sides are coming from, and things that need to be a part of the conversation need to be talked about before you even start. And if you do that, then it's helpful, because a lot of times people will just rush to the extreme and say, well, they're just trying to ban all the guns, or, well, they're just trying to let everything in tanks be okay. And that's both not generally true for most of us, right? Some people are crazy, don't get me wrong, but for most of us, like, no. So yeah, that needs to qualify the conversation.
We all have to understand that some concessions will have to be made. We may ultimately say,
correct,
PTSD is a diagnosis that we cannot allow someone to have a gun. We may have to come to that point, or we may have to accept the fact that if you have PTSD, it does not disqualify you from having a weapon.
Yeah,
right. Like, we have to figure out where that line occurs, and the difficult thing about having that conversation again is that not only does PTSD affect different people differently, the healthcare providers that diagnose PTSD or treat it might also see it differently than the person who's diagnosed with it, as well as differently than the person who's saying, I have to determine whether or not this person is allowed to have a weapon. Like, there's so many variables in there that it's I don't want to say impossible, but it's very difficult to be able to say, okay, this is uniform across the board.
Right.
That's where that difficult, nuanced conversation has to happen, in places like that, in those little nooks and crannies inside the broad discussion of, should we have guns? Should we get rid of them?
Right.
That's the hard part, and that's the part that I'm more interested in.
Hopefully we can do that.
If I could just throw a curveball here. I don't know. I don't know if you guys, how much longer you guys want to keep going, but
you're good. Go for it.
I'm very intrigued because there's a lot of pushback after mass shootings, which rightfully so. Depending on how you want to push back, obviously, is a matter for debate. But there is obviously pushback because we have a problem with mass shooting in this country. But what interests me the most is how we prioritize American lives, because mass shootings, and I just looked up all three of these, right? So mass shootings were responsible for nearly 1,900 deaths last year. Injuries, deaths by just firearm related things. So like you could talk about gun violence or accidental shootings or suicide, right? 33,700 roughly.
Suicide's a big part of that.
It is, yeah. But heart disease related to obesity, 610,000 people last year.
Dude. I know.
It is interesting because that's an insane amount of people, but it's not a conversation we have even close to the amount of ferocity we do around guns and mass shootings. And
it's a little apples to oranges because
it is, obviously, but why?
Can I tell you where the
tell people they can't eat like shit? Like, no, you're not going to do that.
Well, it boils down to personal responsibility.
It does. Go ahead.
You're killing yourself, and nobody gives a shit about you. Once you start killing other people, it's different than you killing yourself.
I think that's true.
Because you were just talking about suicides, right? Cyril, you said, right? Suicides is a big part of that.
It is a big part of that.
The matter is that people that kill themselves on a political scale, on the large spectrum, most people don't give a shit.
Right.
Unless it's somebody they know personally.
Because it's the same thing. I'm all about your life, your choices. That sounds like a choice to me. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
now.
I think that's where that hard part comes in, Chad. Sure. Is that are you affecting other people? And I think that's where most people are like, whoa. If you're killing other people, nope, you gotta stop. But if you're killing yourself,
I think it's also a fear thing though, because the people want to feel safe in public. They want to feel safe in crowded areas. They want to go out and have a good time and not have to worry about where all the exits are or what to do if somebody starts coming in and shooting.
Listen,
there's definitely that aspect to it. But
you know what? No.
What?
From my perspective, right? And again, I'm somebody who's a veteran who's experienced some combat.
Oh, sure.
If you go outside of your door, or when you leave your bed, if you're not thinking about those exits to at least some degree, or how to protect yourself, you're just being ignorant to the world. Because the world doesn't give a fuck about whether or not you want to feel safe.
Yeah, but
and that to me is where
that's not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that people don't feel safe. That's the difference.
Can't we get to a point where we're trying to do better? Dear God, I know we can accept that bad things happen, but we don't have to accept that like bad things happen so frequently that it's just like, well, it is what it is. 800 people die a day. Look for the exits. Like, come on, really?
We do. But we already do that, Cyril.
We can always
absolutely
now we can always
better, but at the same time
we can always do better, but we can always like think of ways. If one person dies, there should be a discussion. Like, that's tragic. Should be discussion. That doesn't mean that we have to just rush to judgment. No, if it's only one person and we deem that level over time is what it is, and we have that discussion before then fine. But geez, if it gets out of control, come on now, gets out of control. Not saying it is, but
mass shootings
at the same time, again, for me, when it comes to personal responsibility, that includes safety. Right?
That's important.
You're personally responsible for your own safety. And
but we have to educate people to do so too.
As putting your fucking seatbelt on.
Oh, sure.
As not texting when you drive.
Oh, God.
As eating the right foods and exercising. Like, if you can't follow those very simple steps, you're doomed anyway.
To me, it was just interesting because, I mean, a lot of us are going to know somebody that's directly been affected by heart disease related to obesity, but very few of us will know somebody that was affected by or killed by a mass shooting.
Right.
I just thought that was interesting where we lay our priorities in this country in terms of how many people are dying in this country.
How many 17-year-olds are dying from a heart attack? I think there's a lot of reasons why it's apples to oranges, right? Like if young people are dying from gun violence, people are like, well, they had their whole lives ahead of them. If some 45-year-old super obese fat dude who ate McDonald's died, look, I'm sorry. What do you want me to say?
That's still tragic, though, Cyril. A life is a life.
So this is a life is a life. But if you made choices in your life and you wanted to make those choices and so if you die to gun violence from someone else, that's not a choice you made. That's not a choice you made at all. Right. Not. That's why I'm saying that's apples to oranges. Now, you're right, Chad. We don't do enough. Well, I don't. Well, Chad, how about this? What do you want to do about the obesity issue? What should we do? Are you going to ban fast food? Sure. I'm just asking you. What? You know,
well, that's a cultural thing. Again, that comes with freedom. Freedom has consequences. I'm not sitting here.
No, I think you're right with the numbers, but if you're going to bring the numbers up, that's fine. If you're going to say like, hey, this looks like it's a little bit more drastic on our population, and not even a little bit more, a lot more. It is. Okay, what are we supposed to do about it?
I'm not saying I have answers. I was just pointing out the fact that in terms of who's going to get killed by what, our fear seems to be a little misplaced, or at least our priorities seems to be a little bit misplaced.
Fear mongering is always a powerful tool.
Fear is a very powerful tool.
It is.
I mean, I get why people care more about mass shootings. I'm just saying, it's interesting that that's what we go to when really.
I always look at it from, was it your choice in what you were doing, and if it was,
it comes down to control.
Yeah,
right? People want to be in control of their lives, and if they want to kill themselves with zebra cakes, then they're gonna fucking do it. And to be honest with you, I eat zebra cakes all the time. That's why it's even funnier. But if you want to kill yourself,
got a vending machine, bro, at your work with zebra cakes in it?
Bro, you don't
feel you on that, dude. When I was at
the zebra cakes, bro. But still, if you want to kill yourself with zebra cakes, fucking go for it, because you have control over doing it. What you don't have control over is somebody who's deranged and shoots you in the face at work or at school or wherever. That's what it is. It's a control piece for most people, right? If you have to have a sense of control, or I shouldn't say you, but most people have to have that sense of control. They don't know how to let go and say, okay, listen, I can control X, Y, and Z, but A, B, and C are out of my control, and I'm accepting that they're out of my control. Most people can't do that. They cannot do that.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I was thinking about
Personal
the other day?
responsibility.
Personal responsibility. Go ahead, Cyril.
You know what I was thinking about the other day?
Go on.
And this has nothing to do. This just struck me because I was thinking about it the other day.
Sure, left field. Do it, dude.
Nothing to do with what we were talking about. When I say the word liberal, what do you guys think that means? Without looking it up. When I say liberal. Okay. Yeah, that's right. I don't think a lot of people think that.
No, they don't.
When people, liberal's been so bastardized. Like,
well, it's
now
been
you can
perverted.
now you can look up liberalism, and it's go ahead and look it up. It's like, but they generally support ideas and programs such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, free markets, civil rights, democratic society, secular governments, gender equality. Like, whoa, that sounds like
It's
things
funny
that aren't
because
terrible.
by definition,
By definition is one
I
thing.
consider
In
myself
practice,
a liberal.
This is another.
In practice,
Sure,
That makes a difference. That makes a difference. That does make a difference. You're right.
Because
the
I
way society
agree with you,
interprets a word, then yes, that makes a difference.
I agree with you. I am
Because you know
all
what?
about freedoms.
You know what I would label myself? I would label myself a classical liberal. Classical liberal. You can look that up too. The only thing I generally chafe at with classical liberalism is completely free markets, which, dude, even the most right-wing person, like, do they really want completely free markets? Like, that's not going to work. It's not black and white. Once again, I chafe at completely free markets, but I don't chafe at the idea of competitive markets and using that to advance society and using that to motivate people. I don't chafe at that. Completely free markets, they have major downsides. Of course they do. But
they have major upsides.
They have major upsides as well. And all I want government to do is to fill in the gaps where the economy or a free market cannot. Like workers' rights gets bastardized over the years.
The problem, though, with a free marketplace is that the amount of hole filling that the government would have to do when it's shitty is just it's too much.
What do you mean? If it's better for society at large, why is it too much?
Well, because let's say it's a free market, and you have one company that controls everything, and they screw the pooch. Well, because it's a free market, it was laissez-faire. You did hands off.
Right, and that's bad.
That's what I'm saying. That's
by definition, that's not free market though. If it's a monopoly.
No, that's not true.
That's a bastardized end to.
No, it's not. That's not true,
no, but that's true.
It is.
Oh, it is. It is.
No,
free market is competition.
You could acquire enough wealth and innovate yourself into monopolizing a whole market.
Correct, but now you're
and
not
it happened.
The very basis of free market
you won the game of free market. No.
There's no winning the game. The idea is to have a healthy competition.
All right.
Monopolies are a bastardized end game for people who are abusing free market.
My belief, though, is that when it comes to competition, the way and this is where I almost want to tell companies, and I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm just going from the gut here, is to tell companies that they are not allowed to do mergers and acquisitions. If you want to compete in a given field, you've got to put up the dollars and start competing.
I don't hate that idea.
You can't just go and buy a company, because what's happening and what I'm seeing is that you've got companies saying, okay, instead of growing and competing against company A, I'm just going to take out a loan and buy company
A.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to ask one question. Should we use this for next week, or do we want to do this right now?
That's actually
let's use it for next week.
Bad idea.
Use it for next week.
We should
probably. What do we think? I already wrote it down.
I think we should probably wrap this one then. Yeah.
Because I want to play a PUBG and I want to sleep too.
I'm stopping the broadcast now.
Okay.